Hello beloved souls, thank you for tuning into the Spiritual Podcasts channel. This channel is all about good vibes, positive energy, and meaningful conversations. To keep this space welcoming for everyone, we kindly ask that comments stay respectful, kind, and in the spirit of the content shared here. We reserve the right to delete any comments that don't align with this intention. No hard feelings, just protecting the vibe. Thanks for being here and spreading the light. Please be cautious of anyone claiming to represent Spiritual Podcast and asking you for money, donations, or personal information. We will never ask you for money through comments, messages, or DMs. All official updates and content come only from this channel. If you see suspicious activity, please report it immediately. Stay safe and thank you for being part of our community. If you enjoy the video and its content, please like, subscribe, share, and comment. Please be kind to other viewers of the channel. The video is about to start.
Welcome back to the deep dive. Today we're tackling something something absolutely fundamental to how we experience the world. It's messy, and honestly, it causes extraordinary discomfort quite often. We're plunging deep into the concept of truth.
Yeah, truth. It's this idea everyone claims they want, right? People fight tooth and nail for it, or what they call truth. But, very few of us are actually ready to handle it when it's pointed inwards at ourselves. So our mission today really is to try and understand the psychological side, the philosophical background, and the very modern challenges swirling around this idea. And then, maybe most importantly, figure out how you can apply that understanding to, self-improvement, critical thinking in your own life.
Okay, let's really try and unpack that central tension right away, because there is this almost universal, maybe even spiritual desire for truth. But like you said, it's constantly fighting with this intense discomfort it causes.
It really is.
Think about, just as a simple test for yourself, have you ever lost a friend because you felt you just had to tell them some difficult, maybe painful truth? You probably felt quite righteous about it afterwards, didn't you?
Yeah. But here's the flip side, the much harder part, the one that really makes us look at our own defenses. Have you ever stopped relating to someone, maybe cut them off, or just got incredibly angry because they told you a truth? Maybe something about your own behavior, your habits, something you just couldn't stomach hearing.
Oh, absolutely. It's always so much easier to see the anger, the deflection, the defensiveness in other people, recognizing it in ourselves. That's much harder. We're just wired, aren't we, to get irritated and defensive when that light shines on us.
Precisely. And that discomfort, that's really the root of our internal self-deception, you could say. It often pushes us to create these internal lies, maybe narratives is a better word, that we desperately need to believe about ourselves, our past, our relationships, just to keep things feeling consistent, to maintain that alignment between our self-image and the sometimes harsh reality.
Right. If the cold, hard truth challenges who we think we are.
The ego doesn't just object. It puts up this fierce, total defense. It has to.
That really sets the stage perfectly. So we're going to look at this truth problem from, three main angles. First, the sort of dizzying external stuff, speed, technology, AI. Then, digging into the history and philosophy, like what does truth even mean today? And finally, the psychology why we instinctively run from our own internal truth. Let's start outside then. The modern battlefield of information.
Well, the challenge of getting truth out there quickly isn't exactly new, is it? Our sources bring up that famous saying, often linked to Mark Twain. Churchill used it too. A lie can travel half the world while the truth is trying to put on its pants.
Yeah, I know that one. And what's truly striking is how social media and tech haven't just shortened the journey for the lie. They've basically put it in a rocket ship. The speed of lies today it's just unprecedented, instantaneous, global.
And this speed, this acceleration, it's directly tied to simplicity. Think about how common it is now. Someone takes a tiny fragment of speech, right? A little sliver of a quote, maybe just a few words, ripped completely out of context. Standing alone, that snippet can look totally absurd, maybe offensive, inflammatory. But in its original context, it probably made perfect nuanced sense.
Right. The misleading narrative works because it's simple and fast. Truth, though. Truth is almost always complex, isn't it? You mentioned something from the sources about explaining these deep, cyclical, political, or social divides.
Yes, exactly. Take, for instance, this pattern. Some historians point out that the world seems to go through these periods of severe, sometimes violent political polarization, roughly every 90 years or so.
Yeah.
Now, if you try to explain that this cycle might be driven by, complex underlying economic forces or shifting demographics, these long-term sociological feedback loops.
Before you even get halfway through the explanation, people's eyes glaze over. It's just too much mental effort.
Exactly. The brain, especially when it's overrun with information, it often just defaults to a simple dismissal. Well, look, I have my truth, you have yours. And that's not just being intellectually lazy, though it is that too. It's a huge barrier to finding any kind of consensus truth. It allows the simple, fast lie to win almost every time. We're kind of biologically programmed to prefer easy answers, even wrong ones.
And as if that wasn't challenging enough, now we've got the age of synthetic deception, AI, deepfakes. The new challenge isn't just someone twisting your words, it's making you appear to say things you never said. That changes everything.
The capability now is, well, it's staggering. We're at a point where just 1 minute of video footage of someone, and think how much video most people have online now.
Yeah, tons.
Just 1 minute is enough for AI to edit their image and voice perfectly. Realistically, they can be made to say and do things they absolutely did not. And by the time they can issue a denial, the fake might have been seen by millions. The damage is done.
The implications are genuinely terrifying. It undermines the very basis of evidence, doesn't it? If I see a video of a leader making some huge announcement, how can I trust my own eyes and ears anymore?
And this isn't some future problem. It's being used right now for major financial crime. There's that dramatic, quite recent story, the $50 million scam anecdote.
Okay, walk us through that one. It really highlights how our normal trust systems just fail against this kind of perfect AI mimicry.
Right. So in this case, someone managed to get into a company's high-level Zoom meeting. They used sophisticated AI to perfectly simulate the voice, the mannerisms, the exact visual appearance of the company owner. They spoke in real time, interacting, and convinced these senior executives, people who knew the owner, saw and heard the owner, giving clear instructions to transfer $50 million to a specific account.
Wow.
The deception was so flawless that the executive's normal checks what you see, what you hear, what you rely on to confirm reality. They just failed instantly. The money was transferred, gone, before anyone realized it was a fraud.
That realization that we literally can't trust a face or a voice on a screen anymore, that's huge. But what's almost funny, or ironic maybe, is that the suggested solution to this super high-tech problem is incredibly low-tech.
It is. It's this practical, maybe essential countermeasure. Set up a family passphrase.
Yeah.
The thinking is, when you get one of those terrifying high-pressure calls or messages like deepfake audio of a loved one supposedly kidnapped, or a scammer pretending to be your bank, demanding an immediate transfer.
Your first reaction is panic. Emotion overrides everything.
Exactly. Your emotional reaction just swamps your critical thinking. You react instantly, which is precisely what the scammer, human or AI, is counting on.
Right.
But if you've already established a simple, known only to your inner circle passphrase, just a word or a short phrase, and you demand that verification before acting, you introduce this non-AI, non-visual check. It's a simple mechanism that forces a pause, forces critical thought back into that high-stress moment. It could protect you from that instant fast lie.
That reliance on old-school simplicity as the defense against cutting-edge deception, that's really fascinating. Okay, so we've established this enormous external pressure cooker of speed and AI. Let's pivot now to the more internal, historical, maybe philosophical question. What exactly are we even looking for when we use this word, truth?
Well, historically, if you go back, say, before the 19th century, philosophy generally worked with this idea of truth by correspondence. It's a classic definition, really quite simple. A statement is true if and only if it accurately matches up with objective physical reality, regardless of who's looking or how they feel about it.
The truth of things you can measure, things that are undeniable facts.
Absolutely. Like the example given. If I'm here, maybe in Campina Grande, as the source mentions, and I heat water, it boils at 100 degrees Celsius at sea level. If you're doing the same thing in Japan, it also boils at 100 degrees Celsius. The scientific fact corresponds to reality. Doesn't matter about the culture, the politics, your personal beliefs. That was the bedrock.
But then, the 19th century arrives, and thinkers like Friedrich Nietzsche basically throw a huge spanner in the works. He starts challenging the very idea that human perception can be purely objective.
Exactly. Nietzsche argued pretty persuasively that our personal perspective, our perception, and crucially our emotional temperature dramatically change what we even perceive as reality. So truth isn't just about the external fact anymore. It gets filtered through the internal state of whoever is observing it.
The sources give that brilliant, almost painfully relatable example of this filter in action. The family WhatsApp group argument.
Oh, yes. We've all been there, haven't we? You get a message maybe from a sibling or a parent, but you read it when you're already stressed out, maybe tired, hungry, running late.
Your emotional temperature is high.
Right. And that message, which might actually be totally neutral, maybe even supportive if you read it calmly, it instantly lands as an outrage, a massive attack, a passive-aggressive dig. It feels true, that interpretation feels real, and you want to fire back immediately.
Yeah, the heat is driving the interpretation, not the actual words on the screen.
Correct. And the key insight comes later, right? If you manage to resist replying instantly, step away, maybe get some sleep, let things cool down, and then you reread the exact same message when you're calm, suddenly you realize, oh, that wasn't an attack at all. It was just a question or whatever it was. Your perception of the truth, the meaning and intent of that message shifted dramatically just because your internal emotional state changed.
That really highlights something profound, doesn't it? That calmness isn't just like a nice-to-have virtue. It's actually an essential precondition for clarity, for accessing any kind of reliable truth, especially when dealing with other people.
It makes that old advice, count to 10, seem, well, often ridiculously inadequate. Sometimes, depending on how triggered you are, you don't need to count to 10. You need to count to 10,000 or maybe 1,000,000. If you jump into that conversation before the emotional heat has gone down, you're almost guaranteed to cause damage to yourself and others, because you're essentially arguing about a reality that only exists inside your own head in that heightened emotional state.
And this tension where our subjective feelings can just override objective facts, it gets massively amplified when you bring group identity into it. Truth suddenly gets filtered through our cultural tribes, our political affiliations, our sense of belonging.
This is exactly that phenomenon of defending your side, isn't it?
Yeah.
Even when, deep down, you might know that some of the arguments your side makes are, well, stretched, maybe even nonsensical, whether it's your favorite sports team, your political party, left or right, or, as the sources mentioned, maybe a really strong regional identity. That loyalty often compels you to defend the group line.
Can you maybe elaborate on that regional example, the Nordestino one, for listeners outside Brazil that might need a bit more context?
Sure. The source uses the example of being a Nordestino, someone from Brazil's northeast. It's a region with a very strong, often quite fiercely proud and defensive collective identity. It's rooted in shared history, specific cultural traditions, often facing common economic challenges together. So their sense of community, their pride, it's intense. Much like, say, maybe alumni from a small, very tight-knit college, or people from a particular town with a long history. They defend that group identity not just based on objective facts, but because belonging to that group gives life meaning. It's part of who they are.
So even if the group starts making claims that seem questionable from the outside, questioning those claims internally feels like betraying your own family.
Precisely. The moment you try to, contemporize things or moderate the discussion or question the extreme voices within your group's narrative, you risk getting immediately pushed out. You get labeled. You're wishy-washy. You're a traitor. You're sitting on the fence. It just shows how far we've sometimes moved from that old correspondence truth to a kind of tribal truth, where loyalty dictates what you accept as fact.
And the really chilling end result of this whole shift is this widespread skepticism we see now towards even the most established facts. I mean, you have people genuinely questioning basic scientific consensus climate change, sure, but even whether the Earth is round.
And we have to acknowledge, for the person holding that flat Earth view, for example, they haven't just casually dismissed the facts. They've often built up an entire, internally consistent, alternative reality for themselves, complete with evidence, explanations, and crucially, a community of fellow believers. That construction, that alternative narrative, it feels just as solid and true to them as objective reality feels to, say, a physicist.
Which brings us right to the core psychological question we need to dig into next. If truth can be so slippery, so filtered by emotion and group identity, why are we still so actively afraid of confronting the really uncomfortable truths about ourselves?
Okay, this is where the conversation really turns inward, doesn't it? It gets quite personal and psychological. The basic reason we dodge internal truth seems pretty straightforward. It's a threat to the ego. It threatens that carefully built-up self-concept, the story we tell ourselves about who we are, that we spent our whole lives polishing and defending.
Exactly. Our personal past, for example, it's not like a perfect video recording stored in our brain. Not at all. It's much more like an edited movie, a psychological narrative. The mind naturally prioritizes memories that reinforce who we believe we are now. So it often highlights certain, maybe traumatic or defining moments, while kind of softening or even forgetting others that don't fit the current story. Right, so if my identity is built around being, say, a survivor who overcame a difficult childhood, I might subconsciously really focus on, maybe even slightly distort, my memory of how a parent acted when I was 5. That becomes the cornerstone of my adult identity. Meanwhile, my sibling, who was 15 at the time, might remember that whole period completely differently.
That's exactly the mechanism. And psychological studies, as the sources note, actually show that memories can be manipulated, sometimes even fabricated under the right conditions, which just underlines that the past we think we know, it's often just the narrative that works best for us now, the one that helps us feel coherent, not necessarily the objective truth of what happened. So if the past is kind of like quicksand, we fiercely defend the nice, neat castle we built on top of it. We have to.
There's a really great physical analogy that captures this shifting perception, how unstable even our sense of the past is. The grandmother's house example.
Oh yeah, that's a classic.
Yeah.
Anyone who's gone back to a place they knew really well as a small child has felt this, I think. As a kid, you remember your grandparents' house as just enormous. Huge rooms, towering ceilings, endless hallways, a massive garden you played in for what felt like days.
And then you go back as an adult, maybe years later, and you walk in and it feels surprisingly small. The garden's tiny, the living room is actually quite compact, the scale is completely different simply because your perception, your physical size and perspective has changed.
Exactly. Now, if our perception of solid physical things like a house can shift that dramatically over time, just imagine how much our emotional perceptions shift. Memories of relationships, of feelings, which are way less fixed than bricks and mortar. Our memory is variable, it's not a constant.
Yeah.
So if some truth comes along that threatens the integrity of this whole shaky self-concept we've built, we instinctively defend the convenient version, the lie, to keep our psychological balance.
This idea of a fragmented self, it really brings to mind that observation from the anthropologist Margaret Mead.
Right, Mead suggested we kind of exist as, well, at least 4 different people, all operating under the banner of you. There's what you think you are, your internal self-talk, your private beliefs. Then what you say you are, the version you present publicly, the defense you put up. Then what you actually are, the objective reality of your behavior, your actions.
Yeah.
And increasingly now, there's the 4th one, what you post online, the carefully curated digital persona.
Wow. That's quite a breakdown. It makes you realize just how complex even your own truth really is. The internal tension when those 4 versions don't line up must be huge.
Absolutely. And beyond just protecting the ego's story, we also avoid truth. Because fundamentally, the human mind craves coherence. It needs meaning. It needs to feel some sense of control. We need explanations for things, even if those explanations aren't strictly logical or even true.
The example of the Thor myth is perfect for illustrating this ancient psychological need, right? The need for order when faced with chaos.
Yeah, think about an ancient farmer. Their entire survival depends on the harvest. Then a huge, catastrophic storm hits lightning, thunder, floods, wipes out everything. They have no scientific explanation. It's just random, terrifying chaos. And that state, that feeling of powerlessness against random destruction is intolerable for the human psyche. So the community creates an explanation. Thor, the god of thunder, must be angry.
And the ritual, the sacrifice, burning an animal, offering something precious, it provides a way back to feeling some control. By making the sacrifice, they believe they're placating the god, regaining some agency. Okay, we did this, maybe he won't strike us next time. It allows them to keep going, plant again next season, instead of just collapsing in despair.
And fast forward to today. We still have that same deep, desperate need for an explanation when we're confronted with something that drastically deviates from what we consider normal human behavior. Take that incredibly tragic example mentioned. The young man who calmly, methodically killed his entire family.
The public reaction, the collective psychological need for an immediate explanation. He must be a psychopath. He must have a severe, rare disorder. It was instant and overwhelming. Why is that need so strong?
It's about maintaining a fundamental social belief system. If society can label the killer as other, as pathological, broken, somehow fundamentally different from us, then we can preserve our own sense of safety and comfort within our own families. The narrative holds. Most children love their parents. Our children love us. If we can't explain the horrific act, if it just seems random, then we feel vulnerable to that same chaos the ancient farmers felt. We'd rather have a flawed explanation than no explanation at all.
So denial then becomes the first line of defense, protecting that comforting narrative. And denial, at its most extreme psychological level, can actually manifest physically, can't it?
Right. Freud talked about fainting, passing out, as the ultimate psychological circuit breaker. When a truth is just too sudden, too traumatic, maybe witnessing a horrific accident or hearing about the sudden death of a loved one, it can be too much for the conscious mind to process all at once. So the mind effectively just shuts down. an involuntary system reset. It allows the person to come back to consciousness slowly, perhaps process the reality in smaller, more manageable doses later on.
That's involuntary denial. But we also engage in voluntary denial, don't we? Often with really serious preventable consequences, especially around our health.
Oh, definitely. This is the classic pattern of willfully avoiding doctors or putting off medical tests. People tell themselves things like, oh, I'm not going to the doctor. They're just looking for something to be wrong. There's this almost irrational fear projected onto the doctor as if they are the cause of the potential bad news.
But the real fear underneath is the fear of the truth about one's own body, right? Because that truth might force uncomfortable changes or confront mortality.
Precisely. That fear of the truth about your health, the example used, is a man avoiding a prostate exam. But it could be anything that fear leads to delaying necessary checks or treatments. So what might have started as a simple, easily treatable, early-stage issue gets ignored. It escalates, potentially becoming severe, even life-threatening. All because of the initial fear of confronting a simple physical truth. The fear of the truth, ironically, becomes the very thing that causes the most harm.
It really brings us back full circle to that ancient wisdom, doesn't it? Socrates famously said, an unexamined life is not worth living. And St. Augustine, too, when asked about his own journey, talked about this need for constant, systematic self-examination.
And examination, really, it's just the search for truth. It's that simple. Just like a doctor orders tests to find the biological truth behind a physical symptom, we need to systematically examine our own lives, our emotions, our reactions, our patterns, our psychological symptoms, if you like, to find the truth behind our own discomfort, our own existential or emotional pain. Okay, so if we accept that achieving some perfect, unified, external, collective truth is, well, probably impossible right now, given everything we've discussed, the post-truth climate, identity politics, deepfakes, not to mention just the sheer incredible diversity of human minds, then the focus really has to shift inward, doesn't it? Entirely inward.
We have that spiritual message cited in the source, attributed to Emmanuel, right? Which basically says that getting everyone on Earth onto the same page about truth unanimously, it's just not feasible right now because of the profound diversity of human minds and the heterogeneity of characters. We're all just in different places.
Exactly. It means expecting everyone, everywhere, to suddenly grasp the same level of political clarity or spiritual insight or ethical understanding all at once. It's just unrealistic. We're operating on different levels of comprehension, maybe different evolutionary stages, you could even say.
And that has really practical consequences, even within our own families, right? Like imagine trying to explain the nuances of modern dating things like ghosting or situationships, casual hookups to your great-grandfather. His reality was probably much more binary. You were either formally courting someone with marriage in mind or you weren't.
Right. His worldview, his frame of reference, simply doesn't contain the concepts or the emotional context needed to really get it. He exists in a different relational dimension almost. So the takeaway is, since that kind of collective universal truth seems deferred to some distant future, we have a clear, immediate duty, and that duty is to ourselves. It's about seeking individual emotional coherence, finding that reciprocity between the person we think we are, our self-concept, and how we actually behave, our actions.
Okay, but how do we actually do that? How do we start examining this unexamined life? Often it seems to begin with tackling that vague feeling, that unidentified malaise you mentioned earlier.
Yeah, that feeling of just being off, vaguely angry or sad or restless, and you honestly can't put your finger on why. It's like that analogy of eating a meal that seems fine, but later you realize there was one tiny expired bit of tomato in it, and now it's making you feel slightly sick.
And if you don't investigate, if you don't find that expired tomato, the discomfort just festers and poisons your whole day or week.
So the process of investigation means actually stopping, pausing your day, and doing a kind of systematic check. How's my home life? Finances okay? How's my health? If the big foundational things seem stable, then you have to trace that feeling back. Trace the discomfort to the immediate trigger. Was this some ridiculous post you saw on social media, a scene in a TV show that hit a nerve, or maybe just a seemingly small comment from a relative that you didn't really process at the time and it's just been sitting there undigested?
But the deepest pain, the most persistent malaise, often seems to come not from outside, but from inside. When our own behavior contradicts some agreement we made with ourselves. That's that self-criticism, Luke, isn't it?
Yes. And that requires really deep deconstruction. Let's say you made a resolution, right? You decided, I want to be less boastful more quiet in social situations, because you recognize that maybe your tendency to talk too much comes from feeling insecure or needing validation.
Yeah.
Then you go to a dinner party and someone says something and suddenly you lose control. You find yourself talking over everyone, trying to impress. You get home feeling just awful, full of self-loathing.
The surface level analysis is just, oh, I did it again, I talked too much, I failed. Oh. But the deeper analysis, the real examination, has to go further, doesn't it? Trace it back.
You have to ask the hard questions. What exactly triggered that need to perform, that exhibitionism? Was it because someone else started boasting about their job and you instantly felt small or threatened? Did you feel this desperate urge to pull out your own trump card, some story, some boast, a clever joke, just to feel important again in that social hierarchy? The real work is tracing that adult behavior, the pattern that irritates you, back to the specific, often fragile, maybe childhood insecurity was designed to protect or mask. That's the self-analysis that leads to change.
Okay, so once we start identifying these deeper needs and patterns, we can actually use some powerful, often uncomfortable emotions like envy, almost like a roadmap, can't we? Envy gets such a bad rap, seen as purely negative, destructive. But maybe we can reframe it, see it as a signpost.
Well, what's really crucial is who we tend to envy. It's usually not, distant mega celebrities like Angelina Jolie, as the source mentions. We typically feel envy towards people closer to us, our peers, the neighbor with the nicer car, the cousin who seems happier, the colleague who got the promotion we wanted. That sharp discomfort, that pang of envy. Instead of just pushing it away or feeling ashamed, we can see it as a often very clear signal of what we truly, genuinely desire for our own life.
So if I find myself really envying a friend who just finished a tough master's degree and is starting an exciting new career, that's likely a lucid desire, isn't it?
It's painful, yes, but it's also an accurate pointer towards a goal that I might want, a goal that requires effort, discipline, study on my part. And it's really important to contrast that kind of lucid desire with what the source calls alienated desire. Alienated desire is basically delusional. It's pure fantasy. The example used, a 52-year-old man, 1.73 tall, wishing he could be an NBA star, or Michael Phelps, without ever training. It's not a goal, that's just denying reality. It's bordering on psychotic thinking. A lucid desire, though, the kind that often emerges when we honestly acknowledge our envy, is usually actionable. It's grounded in possibility, even if it requires hard work.
So here's the key practical insight then, right? We need to take all that mental and emotional energy that we normally waste, feeling angry about being envious or feeling ashamed or resentful, and consciously redirect that energy into actually doing something towards achieving the thing we desire. Envy is basically free fuel, don't waste it simmering.
And this is a huge but this entire journey. From noticing the expired tomato of a malaise, to deconstructing our triggers, to using envy as a guide, it all falls apart instantly without one absolutely essential foundation: compassion. Specifically, self-compassion and infinite self-forgiveness.
Right, if we don't have that capacity for infinite self-forgiveness, like that spiritual teaching about forgiving others 70 times, 7 times, but applied to ourselves, we just get stuck. We fall into this paralyzing cycle of self-blame, auto-accusation that just crushes our self-esteem and stops us from even trying to change. You can't learn and grow if you fundamentally hate the person you are right now for making mistakes.
We have to consciously, actively celebrate the small wins. Even if maybe we messed up badly today, didn't live up to our own ideals, we can still celebrate the fact that we noticed it. We identified the error. Okay, I'm not quite the person I want to be yet, but hey, I figured out why I reacted that way today. I know where to focus tomorrow. That shift in perspective from self-attack to self-awareness is what prevents the paralysis that comes from denial. Because if you just deny the desire completely, oh, I don't envy anyone, I'm perfectly content, you're actually denying your own goals. And that leads directly to stagnation. Emotional, maybe financial, intellectual stagnation. The truth about what you want, however uncomfortable, is what sets you free to actually pursue it. #tag outro. So we try to synthesize all of this, bring it together. The ultimate quest for truth, especially in this incredibly complex, fractured, AI-muddled world we live in, it's not really about perfectly navigating all the external stuff. First, the political battles, the global dramas, sorting out all the fake news online. It is, first and foremost, about having the courage to access the often quite painful interior truth. The truth about who we really are, underneath the defenses, and why we do the things we do.
Yeah, it requires this huge ongoing shift in how we see ourselves, doesn't it? The invitation really is to accept that maybe we're all just patients in a way, seeking healing, seeking growth. The goal isn't blame, it's consciousness. It's taking personal responsibility for seeing our patterns and wanting to change them. When we finally realize some painful truth about ourselves, maybe our defensiveness, our envy, our neediness, It's not the universe punishing us, it's actually a sign that we're finally ready, finally capable enough to actually start changing it.
And that profound personal truth, that journey of self-awareness and change, that's where our real lasting influence actually lies. The Source talks about the living gospel, the idea that the most powerful message people receive from you isn't your carefully crafted social media profile or your eloquent argument. It's your life, your actions, your growth, how you actually behave. That's what influences the people who matter most, your family, your friends, your close circle. They see you changing.
And you don't have to achieve perfection overnight. That's maybe the most comforting truth to take away from all this. You just have to aim to be the possible parent, the possible partner, the possible colleague, the one who is still growing, still learning, still willing to examine themselves, even when it's uncomfortable. That dedication to growth, that openness to sometimes painful truth, that's what people actually observe, respect, and maybe even get inspired by.
You know, you can spend endless hours, endless energy debating the political truths of the left or the right, arguing about collective global issues, fighting all that external noise. But if you consistently ignore the uncomfortable inner truths, the truth about why you lash out in anger, why you feel that sting of envy, why you avoid that difficult conversation or that doctor's appointment, you're missing the only real opportunity you have to create genuine, lasting change in your own life.
The goal isn't some static state of perfection. It's about continuous movement, continuous learning. Like Dory said in Finding Nemo, right? Just keep swimming, keep examining.
We really hope this deep dive has maybe offered some clarity and perhaps crucially some self-compassion for you to continue that essential inner search.
Until next time on The Deep Dive.
Thank you so much for tuning in. I appreciate your time, and I look forward to sharing more with you soon. Until next time, take care and have a wonderful and blessed day.